Okay, welcome everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Extraordinary Council meeting for the 26th of November 2025. There is a primary set of business here, which is the annual report. I will just open with karakia. Whakataka taho ki te uru, whakataka taho ki te tonga, kia ma kina ki uta, kia ma taratara ki tai. E hi aki ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hohu, ti hei, Māori ora. Are there any apologies for today? I think with everyone present in the room there would be none. Is there any identification of extraordinary business? So any matters identified that are not other than what is on the agenda? There being none, we'll move on to conflicts of interest. And this is just a bit of a side note, but thank you to everyone that is continuing to send through their conflicts of interest disclosure forms. For the December Council meeting, we will actually start to list those on the agenda, so there will be a link to those and they will be listed. And so it would be great if that could all be completed for that process. Are there any conflicts of interest that councillors would like to declare today on any of the papers in front of us? There being none, we will move on to confirmation of minutes. These minutes are from our meeting on the 12th of November. Everyone has actually received draft minutes in circulation before they've been published here. I'd ask for a mover and a seconder that we receive and confirm the minutes is true and accurate. Mover Denise, seconder John. Are there any further comments or amendments from councillors on these minutes? There being none, I will take it to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. All right, down to the business. We will move on to the report. So we are here today to look at the annual report for the financial year ended 30th of June 2025. Today in the room we also have with us Mr. Derek Olsen from Audit New Zealand and Ms. Annalisa Alstob, our Chair of Audit and Risk. So I will hand over to the team to deliver this paper. Thank you.
Thanks, Lydia. And kia ora, I'm Annalisa Alstob. I think I've obviously met my fellow Audit and Risk Committee members, and I think I've met a couple of you, but not obviously all of you. So great to be here today, great to kind of meet you, and a little bit from my background. I have been the Audit and Risk Committee Chair, I think, for about 5 years. I was the first independent Audit and Risk Committee Chair, so probably Derek would know the answer to this question, but I think longer than 5 years, between 5 and 10 years, OAG put out recommendations that all audit and risk committees in local government should have an independent, and then they also made a further recommendation that that role should also extend to being the chair, just because of that, for various reasons around obviously continuity through elections and obviously being able to be purely independent. So that is kind of my role. You'll probably hear me say that many times, that I am independent, and I always need to obviously follow the code of ethics and make sure that that is my role. So I'm very pleased to be here today. It's as I started off in the Audit and Risk Committee Hui last week, I firstly want to say an extreme thank you to management, not just the finance team, but the broader communications team and media team and everyone that's been involved in getting us to where we are today. You'll be aware that we are always trying to aim for a 31 October sign-off date. We didn't quite make it, but I think in my 5 years, the closest we've got has been 2 or 3 weeks before Christmas. So, we almost got there, and I think we probably would have if it hadn't have, the cycle hadn't have been around the election time, right? So that is a huge amount of mahi from everyone involved, but especially the finance team to get that. And you'll learn very quickly that, the annual report process is massive, and it's a nice glossy document, but to get to where we need to get to is like a 3 or 4 month process. So that's the first kind of piece of congratulations to the team. The second very important matter is that there are no emphasis of matter from Audit New Zealand, which Derek will refer to later in his korero. Again, that's the first time in 5 years that we have achieved that. We can receive an emphasis of matter, which, in basic terms is, drawing the reader's attention to something. It's not an ultimate red light where Audit New Zealand are giving us almost a vote of no confidence of something in the report, but it's, bringing the reader's attention to something to be concerned about. So in the last 5 years, there's always been something. And that is, it has always been out of our control. It's been, sometimes it's been actually dictated from OAG, around Three Waters or just high risk events. So again, no emphasis of matter, and we almost made 31 October. So that's the good news. The next kind of part of my korero to the Audit and Risk Committee last week is the purpose of why we're here today. So the annual report, it has 3 parts. So when you've gone through it, you've kind of seen that. The first part is around almost that overview, so there'll be messaging from the Chief Executive, from the Mayor on how the year has gone. The second part is our statement of service of performance indicators, which are audited by Audit New Zealand. So we set targets and then we obviously measure ourselves against those. And then the third part is our financial statements, right? Basically, in simple terms, our balance sheet and our P&L. So our role as an Audit and Risk Committee, and then we obviously give our recommendation to full council, is that we want to make sure that the annual report is a true and fair reflection of our financial position. And that's why we have an auditor like Audit New Zealand that do that job for us. The second part is, have we told the story? Like when we look back 12 months, have we reflected a true and kind of fair reflection of everything that we've achieved in the year? So that is our role when we read every page of the annual report. And I did say in Audit and Risk Committee that I do love reading annual reports because it is a chance to kind of be proud, right? You look back in the 12 months and go, actually, we've done really well and we've achieved what we set out to achieve. But it is not a time to do a deep dive on the spend, okay? Because that money's gone. It's a backwards looking position of where we've gone. So the time to do that is through the Finance and Performance Committee on a quarterly basis when you're getting that financial spend against budget. That's the time to be asking questions on why we're spending in certain areas, or should we be spending in certain areas. That's not the role of today because, fortunately or unfortunately, that opportunity has gone. So when we actually walk through, so I explained the kind of that process. We then explained that as good process goes, the Audit and Risk Committee also have auditor-only time with Audit New Zealand before our hui, and that's just to kind of reflect on how the audit went. Are there any lessons learnt that, we can make sure we get right for next time. We then get Audit New Zealand to kind of give their korero on how they think the audit went in full hui with management, and then we have management actually talk through the finances. So I actually like, and I sit on a few audit and risk committees, but I actually like management to actually take us through, to call it a page turn exercise, but when it's 300 pages, we're not doing a page turn exercise, obviously, but we went through the various sections of the annual report just so that we could then be in a position to answer some questions. We did that, and then we asked some questions, we worked through the process, and then we were in a position to make a recommendation to full council to adopt the annual report as at 30th of June 2025. So that was the process. That's how we got to today. So I'll now hand you over to Derek that can give his view on how the audit went from Audit New Zealand's perspective.
Thank you, Annalisa. Afternoon, Councillors, Mayor, Management. For me also a privilege to be here today and be able also then to present the audit report that needs to be included in the annual report for adoption by Council. As Annalisa has mentioned, I think a good outcome this year whereby we are expressing an unmodified opinion with no emphasis of matter. We did, through the audit process, however, identify some misstatements. Those had been corrected through the process. It's probably worthwhile at this point in time, I'm sure everyone would have read through the audit opinion and what is contained therein, but maybe just to reflect on two key areas within that report, mainly 4 paragraphs, and that's the responsibilities of councillors as well as responsibility of audit. So firstly, council's responsibility is to prepare the annual report and to ensure that the annual report is free of misstatement. You do that through implementing internal controls within the business and monitoring those internal controls on a regular basis. The other responsibility of council is also then to ensure that the entity remains a going concern throughout the financial year as well as for the foreseeable future, which normally is for a period of 12 months post-signing of the audit opinion. My responsibility is to express an opinion on the financial statements that have been prepared by council and to ensure that those financial statements are free of material misstatement. So we only report on whether it's a fair reflection, accurate and complete, and that there isn't any material misstatements. So the distinction between what we do and what council do in terms of your respective responsibilities is quite clear in terms of you're responsible for preparing the annual report and needing to ensure that there's internal controls. As part of that internal control process, normally you would also engage internal auditors to monitor your effectiveness and efficiency of the internal controls that you've implemented throughout the year, so that if there are any control breakdowns within your control system, that those are picked up internally and corrected. So it's not necessarily our responsibility to ensure that you maintain your internal controls. We will, through the process and through our substantive testing, determine whether there are any errors. We communicate with management, and then normally that gets corrected as part of the audit process. I think that's quite critical to just make that distinction between what we do as external audit and what your service providers or in-house internal audit does, because that is quite different in terms of scope and purpose. And there might be sometimes a confusion and think there's a duplication in terms of that effort, but it is quite distinct and different. As Annalisa mentioned, also from an independence perspective, external audit is independent from management, from council, whereas in a lot of instances, your internal audit function are employees within council, or you might be procuring a service provider to assist you with that function. So just, I think that's quite important to make that distinction. As I said, we did identify some misstatements through the process. Those were corrected, so we can comfortably say that the financial statements are free of material misstatement. Also, as part of your responsibility, and the Mayor and the CE would have signed the representation letter on your behalf, indicating that you attest to all the things that you are responsible for, and that you've provided us with the necessary information to make this assumption and to express our opinion. We also then, through the process, we focus on risk areas, and we've issued a report, I'm sure that's also within your pack, and we've highlighted the focus areas that we've identified at the beginning of the audit, and that is the risks within your organization, which then necessitates us to do, where we do focus our attention and ensuring that that is also a risk-based approach. You would see from those focus areas, a lot of them relate to the fair value of your assets and investments. Those are the biggest items on your financial statement, in your balance sheet. So they do attract a lot of attention. And we need to ensure that the assumptions and judgments being made by council are appropriate in the relevant circumstances. So again, congratulations to council. I think we will make some recommendations to management in a separate report, but overall we are quite comfortable with the internal control environment within the organization and the specific internal controls relating to specific areas of the business. So thank you.
Right. Good afternoon, everyone. I thought it might be quite good to start giving a little bit of a information about the papers that you've received, because there's a lot there, and there's been a few changes as well. So tab 4 in your pack is the pack that you received on the 19th, which includes the report with the recommendations and the draft papers. Because we were still going through the audit process, we did signal in the council report that there would be an update as soon as that got confirmed. So earlier today, another pack was provided, which is tab 5, which is the updated information, including the letter of representation, the final audit annual report with the independent auditor's report attached to the back. And we've also provided you with an addendum of changes just for completeness. Most of those changes are quite minor or have been sort of at the request and discussion with audit around some of those things. And then again, with some feedback we received from yourselves around the communication snapshot. So in terms of the recommendations, we're sticking with the main council report, apart from in recommendation E, where there is some clarification in the second report in tab 5, which clarifies that we're adopting the final report, not the draft that you received on the 19th. I hope that's clear, because it might make things a little easier as I talk through the rest of it. I'm going to just talk a little bit about the work that we've done to prepare the annual report, but also parts 1 and parts 2 and some of the key highlights within that. So as has already been mentioned, the annual report really focuses on how council has performed in the year the 1st of July 2024 to the 30th of June 2025. It is the first year of the previous council's long-term plan, the 2024-34. So it's around how we've performed both financially and on a non-financial perspective. In the long-term plan, the LTP, we outlined a number of levels of service, and in the annual report we talk about whether we have achieved those, and audit check that, and want to see whether we've got the information, how we've come to the results we have arrived at. So in terms of part 1, is very much a summary of our performance. It focuses not only on our financial but non-financial performance, and some of the sort of key highlights in terms of resurfacing roads, about 84 kilometres of roading, how much we've raised in rates, how many potholes we've fixed. Quite a lot of, I think over 1,000 potholes were fixed after the flooding event in May. And so there is a lot more information, but there's a lot of infographics there, and just to sort of help with that. Part 2 goes into a bit more detail around our 7 activity areas. So our 7 activity areas, which align with what's in the long-term plan, are community services and facilities, local decision-making, environmental regulation, transportation, resource recovery and waste, 5 waters, and finance and support services. And all of those have got levels of services attributable to them. And so in there's a statement of service performance which outlines how we have performed against what we said to the community that we would try and deliver. We've achieved our levels of service on 87% of those measures. In total, there are 178 measures, which is quite a lot. And within each of those activity areas, we have a funding impact statement which talks about the sort of financial performance within those areas. So that sort of gives a bit of an overview around around that part of the report. So what I will do is I'll just talk a little bit about sort of what some of the next steps will be. If council, and the recommendation is for council to adopt the annual report, if council do decide to adopt the report, we will work with audit to produce a summary report, which again is as part of the pack of documents that we need to provide the public. We need to publish that within 30 days of it being adopted, and we'll work with audit to make sure that that is signed off. And the other thing is, and I think this is really important in terms of what we can continue to improve on, is we are having a workshop internally to learn what has gone well, what hasn't necessarily gone so well, and what could be done better. And it's also useful to have the feedback from Audit New Zealand, because yes, we've done much better than possibly Selwyn District Council has done over the last few years, but there's still always room for improvement. So I'm keen to understand how we can do that going forward. I'll now hand over to Neil, who'll talk a little bit more about part 3, which is the financial statements.
Thanks, Rob. So yeah, also just wanted to share that the financial statements you see in the annual report before you is a reflection of the model financial statements we received a copy of from the Office of the Auditor General earlier this year, and we implemented that for this financial year end. As Rob also mentioned, the actual figures that we compare to budget is based off the first year of the current LTP period. So those are the budgeted figures that you see for comparison. So if we refer to the profit and loss, council parent made an operating surplus after tax of $28.7 million, which exceeded the budget, as I mentioned, set by the LTP year 1 by $11.8 million. This is mainly due to $20.6 million higher than budgeted vested assets received. So those are assets constructed by external developers or vendors and then vested to council, and that has to be recognised as revenue. Also, we received $6.2 million higher fees and charges. Those are most significantly in the building consent space, which adds to the growth or reflects the growth of the Selwyn District, and that is offset by lower than budgeted variance in development contributions. There is a bit of a natural offset between vested assets and development contributions, where developer agreements are put in place, where the developers would construct those assets on behalf of council, and they would then vest them over to council to operate and maintain going forward. Total expenses were materially within budget, and there is a detailed analysis of those variances if you refer to note 29 within the financial statements. Below the operating surplus after tax, we have the total comprehensive revenue and expenses of $199 million, which is materially higher than budget. That is due to the fair value assessments, as Derek mentioned earlier, done by external independent professionals. So most significantly, we saw an increase in the fair value of our assets, or our fixed $3 billion of fixed assets, and then also our shares within Orion and Cord. If we refer to the balance sheet, I'll speak a bit about the cash and cash equivalents and the borrowings in one total view. The cash and cash equivalents were $41.2 million higher than the budget, and total borrowings, if we combine the current and non-current, were $28.8 million higher than budget, which reflects a net debt position $12.4 million lower than budget. As we mentioned in last week's finance deep dive, council do borrow at a requirement for all of council. We don't borrow for specific projects, and we also have to comply with our treasury management policy as set within the long-term plan. So management best utilized our borrowing position policy as well as our cash position to create benefits for our taxpayers. Total property, plant and equipment of 2.97 billion was $20.4 million under budget, and that was mainly due to lower capital expenditure. Happy to take any questions on that.
Thank you, Neil. So, councillors, I just touched back on, Robert had covered this off a little bit, is that there are some adjustments to the report that are in front of you, and tab 5 was put into your agenda so that tab 4 wasn't fully refreshed, because if we did that it would remove every note that you had made on your papers. And I would feel your pain in that situation and not like that to happen to you. So it's been provided as basically a double up in that. But I just wonder, Neil, if there are things that you could touch on any of the changes that are made there. Are you comfortable with the changes? And Alessa, that might go to you and to Derek as well, to anyone in the team around those.
Sure. As Rob mentioned, the full list is attached, and I know it's a long one. Most of them are minor adjustments, whether it is wording or alignment of headers. Probably the most significant variance that I'm aware of between the version you received in the original pack and the one we're currently adopting is specifically in that note 29, where we refer to a variance in PPE. As we made corrections, that variance commentary just wasn't updated in the version that you received. So I think it mentioned a variance of 116 million on PPE, and as I just mentioned, there's only a variance of $20.4 million. So that's the most significant adjustment that I'm aware of.
It's probably also important to note that that's a very normal process, that you have kind of moving final adjustments right to the very last minute, which is kind of Derek's life. If it was material and I didn't know about it, then there'd probably be a big breakdown between me and Derek. So the fact that they are just last minute adjustments means that there's nothing that's going to jump out in the last hour that would be material and of concern. So as Neil alluded to, it's very common practice to kind of give that delegation to the CE to be able to approve any last minute minor amendments.
Yeah, if I can add to that as well, and I think that's why we only issued our representation letter yesterday morning, because we wanted to ensure all these corrections does not have a material impact on the financial statements. So we are aware of all those misstatements and corrections and assess them against our materiality to determine whether there's any impact on the financial statements, and we're comfortable again with what you see in front of you.
I'd just like to sort of acknowledge all the staff that have been involved in this, because over the last week they've been really pulling out all the stops to make sure that we got this over the line, and recording all those amendments, making sure that they were reflected in the document, going through checks, a bit of a QA as well to make sure that audit were happy that the report did reflect all the changes that they had identified.
Okay.
And last point from me. The other good thing to kind of note is that I've recommended adoption of many annual reports in the not just in the local government space, but much broader, is that it's not uncommon to have a long list of unadjusted differences. And so that's where management and the auditor disagree. So whether that's through timing or differences, but again, it's a reflection that management and the auditor have worked really well together and have got to a position where we don't have any unadjusted differences that need to be disclosed from your perspective. So again, that shows the culture and the strength of the two teams working together.
Cool. Maybe there's a little bit of responsibility here as well. I note that this is the earliest that Selwyn District Council has had their annual report available for adoption. It was actually the end of October, but I asked for it to be pushed back, noting that we had a new council, and I wanted to make sure that everybody was onboarded, inducted, and had the information that they needed to be comfortable in this space. And I have said, I know it is really hard to accept somebody else's work for 12 months prior that is potentially not yours, and that includes myself to own this with not my name in the front cover, but noting it as a looking backward document. But look, I think that was the right thing to do, to push it back, and I thank you to Audit New Zealand for being flexible in this space and acknowledging that for us. But yeah, we're open for questions if people have any questions of the team here. We are good. John.
Yes, look, thank you, and I'm well aware of the blood, sweat and tears, especially from staff and the auditor and the Audit and Risk Committee, that goes into the presentation of an annual report. And obviously I'm new, but I suppose what struck me was that it is a glossy document, and I have no doubt that it's a true and fair reflection of the finances, and that there is sort of a legislative requirement for the auditor to make sure that it's free of material misrepresentations. So the threshold is fairly high, but what concerns me is that, and no criticism, the options presented are a bit of a Hobson's choice, but that's okay. Hard decisions have to be made, and my main concern is that the way I view an annual report, which may be because of my generational perspective, that it should be a comprehensive account of Council's activities from the previous year, which covers not only the financial, but Council's activities and non-financial performance. And that may well be historical, because I'm not in a position to say whether Selwyn District Council has covered off that broader range or where it's a more narrower report of the annual finances. And just my reading through the draft and hopefully being fully updated on the changes, I've got no real issue with the changes, but reading through the draft, I was just left with this uncertainty. Can I put my hand on my heart and say that I feel that the annual report is going to adequately inform the people of Selwyn as to how well the council has performed? And what I was left with a few heart tremors was that there are several issues, and I'm not going to go into them now because it's not the place or time, that I felt could have been, in my personal view, better addressed and better raised in the period of time. And I support the Mayor's decision to delay, because I presume, again, Hobson's choice from me this time. The only other option was to have the previous council take the responsibility and get it signed off. So that's just my statement, and if there's any response, I'd be more than happy to hear that. And also, if I have a dated or an out of time perspective, don't hesitate to draw that to my attention.
I probably could just add a comment. I think Rob's comment of that continuously wanting to do better, and the workshop that will happen in coming weeks around the process of pulling the annual report together. I mean, Neil alluded to the fact that we have followed the OAG's model, so the model of preparing the statements, but completely hear your kōrero around the commentary, and telling the story. And so, that story has been told, and it's used, I guess, a format and the language from a previous council who were obviously very comfortable with that. But that doesn't mean in future years that you want that story to be told slightly differently. So I would, obviously it'd be a management decision, not my decision, but I would strongly encourage to use, the next 6 months to pull together those kind of thoughts and going, look, it was true and fair. Yes, that middle section are our KPIs which is non-financial. We have measured against those, which is linked to our long-term plan, but maybe that upfront piece that's your story. That's the mayor and the councillors and management's collaborative story. So I imagine that next year's, that first section will look very, very different. So I think, I kind of encourage to use the next 6 months to push those views forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Sarah?
Thank you very much. I'm glad you said that about the context around that first section because, I agree with John. It sort of felt to me like we might have quite a different story to tell going forward. But really, I enjoyed reading the story and I'm actually very impressed that how well you can tell it within the bounds of what is required from the OAG as well. So really just acknowledgement for all of your mahi that has gone in from all of the team because this is a huge achievement. So thank you.
Elizabeth?
Great. Well, it is the end of a chapter, isn't it? Because it's a new council, and I absolutely love on this page where it says on the 29th of November we're going to publicly release it online, stakeholder email, etc. Tools are to reduce the number of printed copies, reduce away, because I don't think there'll be too many people who want to take it home for reading because we are all forward-looking from today.
Noting we did ask for questions. I'm not sure if that is a question directed at me, but look, it's fine. And, like I said, we're adopting something else that isn't ours to own together, but there are lessons learned in the past too. Was there any other updates from anyone?
Yeah, I was just going to get Steve to talk about the corporate reporting.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Lydia. And I think just in response to John and Sarah's comments, and it is a focus that we did talk to the Audit and Risk Committee last week about our focus around lifting our corporate reporting. And as you've noted, this is a 1 year picture, but we've got many opportunities through the Finance and Performance Committee to talk about our financial performance, but also our non-financial performance. And one of the things that Rob and his team are doing to possibly, I think, give council a confidence and a chance to see our ongoing progress is we're going to be bringing back a more fulsome corporate report to council, starting with a briefing in February and leading towards sometime in May or June, more balanced non-financial reporting where you get to see the work of council on a monthly or bi-monthly basis rather than once a year. And so we've taken your points on board, and there will be a focus for the team over the next 6 months.
Thank you, Steve. We'll just note that, so Resolution E on the screen just has a slight change there in saying it adopts the annual report for the financial year ended 30 June 2025 attached as Attachment A to the update on the previous council report from the 19th of November 2025 report. So that is just the slight changes that Audit New Zealand, Chair of Audit and Risk, and our finance team have said that they are comfortable with, and has been added into the agenda pack. So there have been no more questions from anyone around the table. Can I ask that someone move the recommendations in front of us today? Elizabeth, is there a seconder for that? Sarah? Is there any debate on this? Okay, there being none, I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Call it carried. Yes, would you like your abstention recorded, John? Noted, thank you. So aye, against, abstention, call it carried. Thank you. I know that probably seems maybe a little underwhelming for you and the team that have spent a long time putting this together, but noting that there has been a lot of work that has gone into this, and changing the ways of how we operate and striving to do better, I think, is fantastic for the way that the team has been operating. So it is a thank you for the hard work that's gone in to get this on the table, close to legislation timeframes. So well done and thank you. Okay, we will move on to the CORD AGM paper, which is tab 6 in your agenda. So directly following this extraordinary meeting, councillors are welcome to join CORD for their AGM, which will be held in this room. I will pass over to Chief Executive and any of her team to present this paper.
Thanks, Lydia. This is a procedural paper, so council is the parent company. We have one key stakeholder vote, which is why we're looking for the appointment of Mayor Lydia and Councillor Deputy Mayor Big Red as an alternative should anything happen to Lydia between now and the CORD AGM and the next few hours. To vote on accepting the CORD Director's report, and in terms of the remuneration as well. So I'll just leave it there.
Cool, thank you. Look, I'll go to councillors for questions on the AGM paper. There are none. Tracy.
I just wonder when, to do with public excluded, I get that we have to comply with the statute, but I just wonder if there isn't also like a human being way of putting it in there too, so that when the public read it, they've got a more layperson's understanding of why we were excluding. I'm not saying don't put in the statutory staff. I'm just saying because people see excluded and commercial sensitivity, and we all know that there are people who go, oh yeah, that's just because they're hiding behind commercial sensitivity. So I'm just wondering if we can't do a layperson's little thing about why we're doing it. That's all. We don't have to do it.
Look, thank you. We will endeavour to do that going forward, and after any items that are in public excluded, before we close that section, councillors are asked around date of release, and we'll release the information, and perhaps we'll try and wrap up some explanation into that release, if that's okay. Yeah.
Okay, so if there's no other questions on the paper, we will put the resolution in front of us. Is there a mover for this resolution? Sophie. Is there a seconder? Tracy. Is there any debate? There being none, all those in favour please say aye. Aye. Against? We'll call that carried. I will now ask for a mover to move into public excluded. Is there a mover for this? Race, a seconder, Aaron. All those in favour please say aye. Against? Call that carried. We will just pause for a moment while the live stream stops.